Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Honestly, I have no idea what happened, but I had to close just to make sure that, you know, that it kind of like resets itself or whatever. Um, what was the last thing y'all heard me say?
That there was the Charlottesville riots.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you guys remember the Charlottesville situation in that?
Nah.
No.
So Charlottesville happened a few years ago. I think it was in either 2017 or 2018, where basically you had a group of white supremacists. They all went to what's it called, to Charlottesville in, it was either Virginia or West Virginia. Basically they went over there, they came out and they had tiki torches, and they basically were protesting the right to be racist, basically. In that situation, because it's going back to the point of like protesters coming from like all over the place or rioters coming from all over the place. In that situation, you had people from down south going up, you know, to the Virginia area. But then you also had people from like Massachusetts and, you know what I'm saying, up north, because one of the main differences between the north and the south is like, more times than not, like down south, like if somebody's racist, you're probably going to know that in advance. You know what I'm saying? You probably don't have to second guess whether that person is racist or not. Like they're going to be pretty upfront about it, and they're going to own it. And you know, proof of that could be maybe having a Confederate flag, or you know, like just obvious treatment of people of color. Where like if you're up north, because it's so liberal, quote unquote liberal, compared to like the southern states or whatnot, everything is more supposedly progressive and integrated. You have a lot of undercover racists, you know what I'm saying? Like people that basically, they'll sit at the table with you, you know, you being a person of color, but like, and they'll smile, they'll kiki ha ha, whatever, like they'll really chop it up with you if they have to, but on the low, like they really just don't like you, mainly because of your background, and or they feel a certain type of way about you. You know what I'm saying? Like in Boston, for example, which is one of the biggest cities, like it's one of the top cities in the United States, top big cities, and you know Boston, like around the Boston area, you got Harvard, you got Harvard University, you got Fenway Park, which is the oldest baseball stadium still around. You got a lot of history. You know, you had the Boston Tea Party from way back in the day. There's a lot of history there. But, you know, like not too long ago, it came out that police officers and even civilians refer to black folk as Mondays. You know what I'm saying? Because instead of saying, for example, the N-word, you know, this is like another code word for being able to say, you know, the N-word without actually saying it and without actually getting in trouble. There's articles on this. You can obviously Google it and you'll find them. But, you know, it's like the racism up north is definitely a lot more closeted than what it would be in a lot of places down south. But Charlottesville is an example of like people gathering from all different places just to protest. And, you know what I'm saying? Granted, yes, it's your First Amendment rights to protest, but obviously they're not protesting in favor of, you know, saving all lives or whatever the case. Like they're trying to say like we're the only people that really matter, what have you. Who said that it was their time to be the discussion leader today? Who's our discussion leader for today? All right, I guess.
Mel said he was.
Yeah, it was me.
Melvin.
It was me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
My house is kind of crazy, so I'm always like coming on and off.
That's cool, man.
Second. One second.
What we could do is, you have the questions right in front of you, or did you post them on the discussion board?
No. No, I didn't, but I have them.
Okay. So I guess, you know, you got time today, or, you know, throughout the week, post the questions on the discussion board. But if you got the questions right in front of you, go ahead and feel free to start off with your first question.
Yeah, one of the questions I had was so I mean, if you guys know about the case, uh do you know uh, why did they get this there was this trying to remember his name, the guy who did the autopsy for Michael Brown. Do you think he should be prosecuted because he was a fraud actually? Do you think he should be prosecuted and you know, like convicted of fraud, like autopsy fraud? He said he was a doctor, but he's really not a doctor.
Right. So I'm gonna add some context to your question, because that's a great question. And obviously you have to run through some of the videos, like in the very beginning of Ferguson, the topic in the syllabus. You could click on the link that's basically talking about Mike Brown's autopsy, because it basically says men who assisted in Mike Brown's autopsy of fraud. The whole point of this specific topic is that it's kind of showing you that police in general, if there's anything that's sketchy or that can kind of get them complicit with some kind of misconduct or whatever, like, unfortunately they'll try to cover it up. And the recent case of George Floyd, we definitely could see that when the first medical examiner was talking about he didn't die from the knee to the neck, but he died from other respiratory issues that he had. But at the end of the day, that video circulated the world. You know what I'm saying? Everybody literally witnessed a man die. And we knew just by looking at it, whether he had a breathing problem or not, that knee was responsible for his death. If there's no knee on his neck, he doesn't die. And so they basically had to get a private, they had to hire somebody private to basically do a second examination. And that person found, yes, it was because of the knee to the neck. And they were also blocking his airway from his back because they had the knee in his back as well. This is not the first time that they try to cover up evidence, once the person is dead and once they do an autopsy. Because a lot of times we think about, when we think of police brutality, we think of the beginning instance, which is obviously when the police grab somebody and throw them on the ground or beat them up or shoot them, kill them, whatever. And then we always think about the end result, which is, did the officer get convicted? Did they get acquitted, et cetera, et cetera? But in order for that last part to even be valid, there's a process in the middle, which is the investigation, right? Like, you have to analyze the situation as a whole. What happened? What are the witnesses saying? Was there video footage and surveillance? And then, of course, like the coroner, he's going to have a pretty big say in it, because they pretty much already study, what are the different causes for somebody's death, you know what I'm saying? And they can tell by any bodily injuries or whatever, like, probably what was happening in that situation. They can give you an educated guess, basically. The situation with Mike Brown's body, and you can click on the video and you can check it out for yourself. Basically, once they recovered his body, they had actually washed his body before they actually took all the fingerprints and the different evidence that was on his body in order to give a full, thorough investigation. So they basically destroyed the evidence before they even got to collect it off his body. So right there, that's already unethical in itself, because you're talking about a body. Like, this individual is no longer here. You would think that, or you would hope that somebody's body is at least given the respect to, you know what I'm saying, to be treated like anybody else, even after the fact that they're dead. But in Mike Brown's case, who he was still a teenager at the time, even though, yeah, a lot of people say he was bigger than the average teenager. The reality was he was still a teenager. And he ended up getting killed, and the evidence on his body was destroyed. That's not something that you hear too often, or that you even hear happens even accidentally. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're a coroner and you're somebody collecting information regarding the autopsy, like, you're very careful with all that. Second, as what Mel was saying, the person that was actually taking this information from the body or performing the autopsy, they weren't even certified or weren't even licensed. You know what I'm saying? Like, basically, they were impersonating a professional that does this, but in reality, they didn't have the credentials to do this. Somehow, some way, this individual finessed being somebody who's able to perform autopsies and whatever, and he's done it many times for many different departments, and they continue to rehire him, and you know what I'm saying, it just, that in itself doesn't even make sense. The third thing is, once it came to light that he was a fraud, right? Basically, that opens a whole nother can of worms, because a lot of cases were actually closed because of his findings, right? Because of his examinations that he provided and things of that nature. So if he's found to be a fraud, or if he's, considered to be not valid, what does that mean for all the other cases that happened before Mike Brown? You know what I'm saying? Like, they basically have to reopen every.
Yeah.
They have to reopen every single case again, because just that in itself was that tainted everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not even a question in nobody's mind, but a lot of them. That's the reason why they haven't gone forward in prosecuting this dude, because he's been used in so many cases, and it's just going to end up making the court system, the criminal justice system as a whole, just look like a whole joke. You know what I'm saying? And this is public information. This is like out in the open. Again, you can check out the link, and this is like on a major news outlet that it got reported. But obviously, it's like the fact that this could even happen, and that it happened after like 2010 and stuff like that, is mind-boggling. And obviously, you like, for the sake of numbers and keeping a certain image, they haven't gone after that guy. The system would much rather, try and cover up their tracks than to actually own. Look, we hired a dirty individual. You know what I'm saying? Let's reopen all these cases and let's re-examine them and give people their fair share, or see. You know what I'm saying? Let's really go after justice instead of just being right. You know what I'm saying? So with that information being put out there, now that you kind of have like a little sense as to like the autopsy part that Mel was talking about, like, what's some of your general opinions and perspective about that?
You said that if they, sorry.
You could go. You could go ahead.
You said that if they decide to reopen all the cases that they closed because of that fake person, the criminal justice system would look like a joke, but it already is a joke. So it wouldn't really make much of a difference on the appearance part. They're just gonna like make, instead of just being, well, oh, just cover it up, they could actually give the families and all of the other people that they wronged with their fake information some like closure or whatever. So
Right.
it, even though it would make them look bad, they still doing something to help the situation in a way.
Of course. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that the reason they don't want to open or investigate the guy um is because just money. Like if you go after him, you're gonna have to open all these cases back up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like money, and
Yep.
then like the prosecutors who got information from that doctor, from his name was Sean Perel. I just looked it up. Um, yeah, Sean Perel. So any prosecutors who got information from him and to convict a person, their reputation is on the line too, because now they have to give an explanation
About to say that.
about like all these frauds. So like money's involved, definitely. So I don't think anybody wants to go after these guys, like if like prosecutors like trusted him. They just
Yeah.
want to keep that on the low.
Most definitely. And I think you brought up a super valid point. Like the money plays, it definitely is going to play a huge role in it, because that in itself is easily grounds for lawsuits, left and right, left and right, left and right. You know what I'm saying? Like how, like we don't even know how many autopsies this individual has performed. Like clearly from what the news reported, like he's performed a sizable amount. Literally, all of those autopsies could, you know what I'm saying, they can go the wrong way for the criminal justice system. And you're talking about millions on top of millions of dollars. The criminal justice system already spends millions in trying to come to settlements and agreements with people. You know what I'm saying? Um, like police budgets are already set up in a way where like they have money allocated specifically for settlements, because they know they're gonna have to do settlements. They know that there's gonna be cops doing some fuck shit. You know what I'm saying? So like at the end of the day, that's just the way that they're approaching the situation. But it's like this is a whole nother situation, and as you also mentioned, like the reputation of a lot of these individuals. It's like look at what happened to Linda Fairstein once when the CS documentary came out. You know what I'm saying? Like all of her publishers dropped the books. You know what I'm saying? The prosecutor that was involved in the Central Park Five joggers case, she was told by black students on Columbia University's campus to resign from her professor position, which she actually ended up doing. Like at some point, like it all catches up with you, man. Like and especially now, like with the high technology, like the high level of technology we have, and like to get everything just like that in a heartbeat, like the process of exposing people has just gotten faster. Where back in the day, like it could have took months, it could have took years. Like obviously now it can still take years, but because people have more access to information and more access to recording stuff, information can go around super fast. And just look at how this officer got prosecuted in a week from when he actually committed the crime. Yeah, he should have been prosecuted that first day. You know what I'm saying? Like they should have arrested him and all that in that first day, in the first 24, maybe 48 hours. But I don't personally know of another situation where like an officer who committed police brutality got arrested this fast. Like me personally, I haven't heard of it. You know what I'm saying? And that obviously it's a result of like all the people having information accessible, like right there on the spot. And so it does play a huge factor. And it's sad that they feel like they gotta basically fuck around with somebody's dead body. You know what I'm saying? Like again, in Mike Brown's,
Somebody that got bumped.
what happened? In Mike Brown's situation, he was a teenager. Like I said, he was late teens, but he was still a teenager. And when he got shot and killed, the thing that really upset people more than anything was that he was left on the ground lifeless and his body wasn't even covered for 4 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like, that in itself is like, that's like a throwback to like what they used to do back in slave times. You know what I'm saying? Like in order to like make an example out of people, and you know what I'm saying, to like demonstrate to everybody else that's a slave, look, this is what happens if you try to run away, or this is what happens if you try to do this or that. Like, they would literally punish the offending individual in front of all the other slaves. And you know what I'm saying, like, this is literally like a throwback to that. And it's like, it's going back to the topic of PTSD. Yeah, obviously everybody, the majority of people that are alive today weren't around during those times of slavery, but you still have generational trauma. People know what happened. People from learning their history and from reading the history books or going on YouTube, or you know, classes just like how we have right now, from stuff like this, like, people are generally aware as to what happened even centuries before we even existed. You know what I'm saying? And so when we start seeing it happen in our modern day society, and it's like people want to put out this narrative, oh, we're way past slavery, get over it, this and that. Yo, the slave mentality that, you know, the people on the top still want to put on the lower class or on minority groups or whatever, like, it still exists, and it exists in different forms. So, you know, that the fact that his body was left uncovered for that many hours, you know what I'm saying, where if it was somebody from the white community, you know, it obviously would have been done a lot sooner. That in itself was like, that was like the stamp saying this was done on purpose, or it was the stamp saying, like, at the very least, you don't care about black bodies. You know what I'm saying? So that added like a whole nother element to it. What's your second question, Mel?
Mel, you're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, my bad. No, this is like a very simple question. My question is, why did he get shot? Do you know why?
Anybody have the answer to that?
So yeah, was it like, my answer is because he's black, and that's why he got shot. I feel like the investigation shows that there's just different witnesses. You know, some say he charged, some say he reached for the cop's weapon, some say that he ran away. So like, there's not really like, no one knows why he got shot, except that there was a call for a robbery.
Yeah.
Like, someone had stolen. So that's the thing that makes me ask this question. Is like, why is he getting shot for stealing cigarillos? Like, that's not the way you should approach a situation. Like, the cops come with a mentality that like they're gonna like have a shootout or something. I feel like the way I think it's like racism that they don't even know. Right. They're just like they just have like, I feel like white police have had an image in their mind that they're scared of, like that they grew up with a certain image of the black person. So yeah. If, like, I feel like if we don't change how people think about black communities or communities of color, then there's gonna be a problem, because they're always gonna be approaching a situation with with that mentality, with that like, I'm gonna come here to.
I had to change in my traveling bag, but really, it's only my outfit. It's only my outfit I'm wearing in there, to be honest, because I'm done staying out.
Can you put it on mute real quick? Thanks. I definitely agree. obviously all the details are still very is
Mm.
kind of sketchy.
It's not even good. My outfit for tomorrow or tonight.
Honestly, can you just put it on mute real quick?
I'm so sorry. I'm grabbing my phone right now.
No worries. Thank you. I hope your outfit is popping. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure it is. Yeah. Know what I'm saying I'm sure my I'm sure all my students got
It's my birthday, you
swag.
guys.
Nah,
Sorry.
you good. You good.
Birthday.
Thank you.
The situation with Mike Brown, you know, going back to what you were saying, Mel, about like officers approaching a situation with a certain mentality is true. Because kind of like what we talked about with predictive policing, right? Like when we talked about strategy and things of that nature, like they already have a sense as to like where crime may generally happen or whatever. And, you know, a lot of times those numbers, because they don't get corrected, if somebody arrested somebody and then they got, you know, the case got dismissed in court, like those numbers still stay in the police records. So it still looks like, oh, this is a high crime area or whatever. And what that ends up doing is you end up creating more crime where there actually wasn't. And because those numbers don't, you know, don't get undone, now police are going to be there even more. They're going to be over policing. So now you create even more crime because there's more opportunity to lock somebody up. And yeah, you know, granted, they're obviously in communities that maybe have lower income or are not affluent or whatever. In general, you're going to find some level of crime because crime and poverty are generally connected with each other. You know what I'm saying? It's not race as much as income, but at the end of the day, it opens up even more opportunities where if you had more police in the suburbs, you know what I'm saying, compared to like what there is now, I'm sure at some point those numbers will also rise up even a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But this mentality of, oh, this person is dangerous, this and that, and it's primarily based on skin color and based on like perceptions of, you know, that's put on them. It's like it does play a factor, and I think you hit it right on the head. Like at the end of the day, even if Mike Brown did take the cigarello, like that doesn't even,
Such a petty crime.
yeah, it's a petty crime. It doesn't even add up to what ended up happening. You know what I'm saying? Like you have mass shooters from the white community who have killed various people and they don't get shot in the head by the police. You know what I'm saying? They get, matter of fact, they get taken.
Never.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. They get taken to Wendy's and they get a bulletproof vest put on top of them to make sure they don't get killed. So it's like the hypocrisy and the backwardness, you know, they want to approach it. It's not even backwardness or hypocrisy. To me, they're being pretty straightforward about what they really think about, you know what I'm saying, certain communities. And it's just about people accepting it and acknowledging that reality and just saying, yo, this is really what they believe. How can we flip this on his head? And obviously right now we're like, what I see what's happening right now is like when you're pedaling upwards on the hill. You know what I'm saying? Like you're pedaling upwards on the hill. We're like right there. Like the top is like right here. We're like right here. You know what I'm saying? We're almost right there at the top pushing it. And then like you gotta just make that top of the hill. And then, you know what I'm saying, once you come down through the other side, it kind of just rolls down the line easy. I feel like obviously there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously, but you know, this is like one of those times in history where like the power has been put back in the hands of the people. You know what I'm saying? People really have a lot of say so in what they want to do. Like right now, Los Angeles and New York, two major cities, two of the biggest cities in the country and in the world, have committed to defunding police. You know what I'm saying? Like Los Angeles, they're talking about 100 million to 150 million, and basically taking those funds, putting it back into communities of color. Now, the thing that has to be taken into consideration is, okay, the defunding is happening, but what specifically is going to be done? You can't just say put it into communities of color, and then you have your own politicians, you know, working in like these agencies that, you know, you can kind of dictate how those funds need to be allocated, because those funds can be given to a community of color, and then at the same time they could they could partner up with a government organization or some kind of organization that basically still tells them what to do and how to do it. So it's like the power is not even in the community of color as they were making it seem, you know. So like those specific statements and allocations, they have to be very specific. You know what I'm saying? This much is being allocated to creating more recreational centers. This is being dedicated to X, Y, and Z nonprofit organization specifically for X, Y, and Z. Everything has to be specific, because if it's not specific, you know what I'm saying, the lawmakers, policymakers, the politicians, they could still spin it in a way where it's still going to come back and not benefit the community as much, you know. And an example of this was Mark Zuckerberg. He gave, I think it was like $200 million to Newark, New Jersey, to basically help out with the school system. He didn't give the $200 million saying it has to be done like this. He basically just said this is for, like, you know, pay the good teachers better and, you know, remove whatever. But he left it all up to the governing bodies, the governing boards of education and the unions and all that stuff. And they basically ended up just hiring consultants with that money. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't put it into funding the schools. They didn't buy more educational resources for the students. And if anything, it made the situation worse, because if you know anything about Newark, like even any city where the downtown area is still gutter, like you know it's just not the best place to be around. If downtown is still gutter to whatever extent. So it's like they ended up moving students to like schools further away from their homes, which that's a big issue, because if there's shootouts and stuff like that, it makes like the likelihood of you getting caught up in a situation like that with your home being further away from you from school it's easier for you to get caught up in a situation. So that's just one example of why these allocations have to be specific, because if you just keep it general, they can take these funds and kind of do whatever they want with it. They'll still always find a loophole or a way to, you know, not really sow into the community the way they're supposed to, because at the end of the day, like we already see, like we actually do have the power. Like if we wanted to organize and overthrow the government, we can actually do that, because there's far more civilians than there are, you know, people in the armed forces or police or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things to consider. And Mel, provide me with your last whose birthday is it today? I just seen the chat. It says happy birthday.
I think it was Shaughnessy. That's how you say her name.
I only could extend for a couple. Yeah. Sorry.
It's her birthday.
Whose birthday is it today?
Wait, say that again, because you broke up.
Whose birthday is it today?
Oh, okay, it's my birthday. I turned 22.
Oh, hey, happy birthday! Everybody,
Thank you.
We're gonna sing it up for her. Rock. Y'all ready for this? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Yo, what's your birthday? You already.
Oh, you what? Oh, you two. Oh, you three.
You're about to get it here. You know the time. Okay. Hey, let's clap it up for Honesty. Let's get it. Try to come off the dome with it, you know. I just see that. I'm like, oh snap, whose birthday is it? Nah,
I didn't hear the first time.
Nah, it's all good. More life to you. You know what I'm saying? We have another birthday tomorrow, so you know we'll. And if you have birthdays coming up, please.
Damn.
My birthday is June 15th.
She's busy.
June 15th. Okay. Send me an email or send me a message so that way I could kind of create like a calendar for y'all or whatnot. But
Mine is on the 29th
okay,
of
29th.
this month.
And if anything, if y'all this, it depends on y'all, but if y'all are down, what I'm saying, we could do like we could get together, social distancing with the masks, all that stuff, and maybe like go to a park once things start to reopen.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And kind of just reconnect like that a little
I'm
bit.
trying to be where you at. I want to be in Florida
Facts.
and Miami.
I'm
See you out there. I'm getting a flight out there.
I officially left today. I'm back over here in NY, so
Oh, word.
yeah. Right now I put the virtual background because I still want to feel like I'm in Florida. I know
You came back?
right now. Yeah, I came back yesterday.
Because I'm going to Florida next month on the 18th, and I'm taking your class next month.
You're taking corrections as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, look.
Professor, teach corrections for the fall too.
I'm teaching corrections and I'm teaching policing for the fall.
Good. I think I need both.
Copy. So, obviously, like by then things will be a lot smoother. I guess, like at least in regards to like how I prepare the online courses. If you're taking corrections for summer 2, what I'm saying, I'm here. you know the vibes already. But at least for this class, we're gonna see because we're like almost midway through this month. Maybe like closer to the end of this, maybe like the next week or two, if maybe we could set something up to like meet up at a park or whatever. Saying just to like grab food and social
That would be
distance.
so nice.
That'd be fire.
Yes.
Yeah,
The fall semester will be online.
Maybe we could do like our presentation in person.
Oh, yes.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
When it's really, really nice out, because now it's starting to rain.
Now we
go to the beach.
A nice day. You say go to the beach. My man, you gonna drive us over there?
Of course, we're gonna barbecue, hookah, and all of that. Oh, whoa, okay.
Whoa! Listen, man,
I'm down. Okay, they caught me with the hookah.
Not working on.
You know what I'm saying? Put that in the chat or something. Right now, we got this whole class getting recorded right here. So I mean, if anything, I could y'all already got your WhatsApp group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna just put my info here. Fuck it.
Yes.
I'm gonna put my info here. Obviously, if don't violate, that's number one. Don't violate and blow up my jack or whatever. But you can add me in the group. Whoever's facilitating the group chat or whatever. If anything that I could help out with, obviously on the side, y'all already know. Like y'all can anytime, but is my info. And I'll definitely be responding. I got WhatsApp too, so I'll definitely be in on the group conversations as well. I didn't include myself originally because I wanted to just allow y'all to kind of bond with each other. But you know what I'm saying, I ain't gonna be in there all the time, but every here and there I'll throw in a little something, you know what I'm saying, I'll interject. But yeah, let's definitely set something up, because it seems like it's a little safer to come outside and, at least people seem to be more comfortable doing so, especially now that pretty much the whole world came outside for the protest. So it's like.
Professor, the fall semester will be online?
As of right now, it looks like it's most likely going to be online. Yeah. But, it's.
Like the whole CUNY, right? Not only BMC, but the CUNY?
All of CUNY, pretty much the university, like colleges, they're following each other's leads, because it's like nobody wants to be that one college that's like, when you're still open in the pandemic, because it's like, and I just heard this president for a university speak about that, sometimes you have to make the decision for people. Like you can't wait for the government to say this, and that, because at the end of the day, I have to think about it like, what if my kid is going to school? You know what I'm saying? What I want them to continue to go to school? Like, that's the way that a president should be thinking. Like, would I want my kids to continue to go to school if all of this is happening and et cetera, et cetera? Like, and, you know, you'd rather just not even deal with it. So a lot of schools, they're just not even going to do the in-person thing. I teach at another college as well, and they pretty much already said, like, yo, we're just doing everything over a computer. Like,
Wow.
it's pretty much worked for a lot of people. Like, and the main thing is, like, people just got to continue to get trained. You know what I'm saying? Like, last semester, nobody really had the time to, like, if you didn't know how to use Blackboard or how to make the adjustments already, or use Zoom, you pretty much was asked out anyways. But now at least people have time to, like, catch up with trainings, and a lot of the trainings are being required in order for you to teach anyways, at least for BMCC. So at least you can feel comfortable that at least more comfortable, I should say, that your professors, by the time fall comes through, they most likely would have did their training because it's mandatory.
Thank you.
So,
Wait, are we going back to the school building in September, or still going to be online?
well, that's what we were saying. Like, it's still most likely going to be online. They might still open up the school for people to, like, go in, use the computer, use the library. But I'm pretty sure they're going to put a capacity to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, no events over 50 people, stuff like that.
Yeah, this is going to be hard.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks, you know, because we'd all rather just be in person, having class and stuff like that. Like anybody that's had a class with me, like, in person, will tell you, like we be having the bug out sometimes. You know, like, I come in the morning, depending on the mood or whatever. Like, I throw some bachata. I put, you know, recently I was putting, like, Pop Smoke. You know, like, obviously after, like, the situation happened with him or whatever.
And his birthday's next month.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, I try to make it an enjoyable environment for students. You know, we laugh, we chop it up. Like, obviously, it's a different environment when you're in person. Like, you could feel people out a lot better, and be more engaged than if you're just online and kind of just, you know, you don't even have to interact. Like, most of y'all ain't even revealing yourselves on camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, for all I know, somebody could be in the bathroom right now. But the matter is that in class, it's definitely a much easier dynamic or whatever. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna share the screen. I feel like this conversation on Ferguson, we should probably continue also this class because it's very relevant to what's happening right now. But basically, we're going, okay. So it's saying I can't even use this. Yeah, New York Times is requiring for me to do a subscription. Let's see. All right, so what happened in Ferguson, Missouri. Basically, here are some essential facts about Ferguson and the shooting of Mike Brown. Fact number one: Ferguson, Darren Wilson shot and killed teenager Mike Brown Saturday, August 9th. Basically, Mike Brown was shot to death by Officer Darren Wilson around noon on Saturday, August 9th. Darren Wilson, 28, he was a 6-year veteran of the Ferguson police force with no prior disciplinary record. Although the exact circumstances of the shooting remain unclear, Brown was unarmed at the time of the shooting. All shells found at the scene were from Wilson's gun. Brown had graduated from Normandy High School in the spring of 2014. He was planning to begin classes at Battle Rock College Monday, August 11th, 2 days after he was killed. So basically, Mike Brown just graduated high school, and he was actually expected to college like basically 2 days after he got killed, which is kind of similar too to like the Breonna Taylor situation. Unfortunately, she got shot and killed when she was inside the home. The officers, they didn't identify themselves. They basically just started shooting. Like they shot through the home. They sent over 20 shots in the home. 8 of those shots went and pierced and hit Breonna. Breonna was actually pursuing a career in nursing. She had no prior, history of being, a troublemaker or nothing. You know what I'm saying? And even in that case, the police, like did Breonna have any enemies or things of that nature? Because obviously they were trying to cover up, what they did and all that. So here you have another case of a kid that, unfortunately, his at least him even starting college got cut short because of what ended up happening on that day. And the most important factor here, Brown was unarmed. The officer claimed that Mike Brown had punched him through the car window. Basically, he had also claimed that Mike Brown had tried to reach for his gun, but this was after the officer in his patrol car was following around Mike Brown and his friend, basically throughout the neighborhood and et cetera, et cetera. And, at the end of the day, like there were witnesses saying that Mike Brown looked like he was being pulled into the car. Obviously, Wilson was saying that he was going into the car and he was trying to attack Wilson. What the autopsies did find was that there was a shot that went like kind of around like the top of Mike Brown's crown. Like, so basically at some point, like the position of his head was like, it was like if it was leaning down and into the car. So like the shot went from like the top of his head, you know what I'm saying, but coming from a downward trajectory upwards, you know what I'm saying? So basically at some point, at least just from that discovery in itself, it did seem like Mike Brown was in the car to some extent. Whether he was pulled in or whether he went in, nobody really knows 100% the details of it. But again, Mike Brown was unarmed. And this all stemmed from an alleged, petty theft or alleged petty crime of stealing a cigarello, you know what I'm saying? Which obviously ended Mike Brown's life early. Ferguson is a majority black city with an overwhelmingly white police force and city government. So these are the percentages right here. Ferguson is a majority black town. According to the 2010 census, about 67% of residents are black and 29% are white. All right, so that is a number that needs to be remembered. I'm gonna jump down to here. There are also evidence that the Ferguson Police Department, like many other local law enforcement agencies, disproportionately stop and arrest black residents. According to a racial profiling report from Missouri Attorney General's office, that was a BuzzFeed, over 5,000 traffic stops were made last year. Over 4,600 of them, basically 86%, targeted black drivers. So you have 86% of over 5,000 stops targeting black drivers in a town that's, say, it's a little over half, the black community, but at the end of the day, 86% is a huge percentage. Only 684 or 12.7% targeted white drivers, even though Ferguson is almost 30% white. All right, so that's a very low percentage for a population that's still has a decent amount of white folk in it. Going down to the bottom, it says, yet black people are also far more likely to be arrested than whites. According to the same report, 92.7% of people arrested by the Ferguson police in 2013 were black and 6% were white, which is overwhelming. And this is the thing too. The Ferguson Police Department was actually over 80% white. All right, so you have a police department that's over 80% white in a community that is over 70% black, the residents. So what do you think is going to end up happening in a lot of those confrontations? It's going to be a lot of, as what Mel was alluding to earlier, it's called implicit bias. Whether people are aware that they have these biases or not, like if you're not, like basically these things are implicit bias. Like if you're a white individual walking down the street and you see somebody of color, right off the bat, you might fear for your life, you might be like, oh my God, am I going to get robbed? Am I going to get beat up? You know what I'm saying? So you cross to the opposite side of the street or something like that. That's called implicit bias. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a bias that exists in you that, whether you know it or not, is affecting your decision making and is affecting the way that you go about life in general. This is the same kind of bias that, you know, we try to put out about undocumented immigrants. Oh, they're rapists, they're this, they're that. But the reality is they actually contribute tremendously to the U.S. economy. Like, if all undocumented immigrants were to get deported in one shot, the U.S. economy would literally implode, because so much is based on illegal agriculture and all of this stuff. Because a lot of companies, like, and some of the major companies like Taco Bell, Walmart, you know, McDonald's, like, they have all in the past obtained their food, like vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, through agriculture that has been produced by undocumented immigrants who get paid maybe like $1 an hour in a lot of cases. You know, who knows what they get paid, if they get paid. And so all of these things where somebody is basically reacting or behaving a certain way because of what they think is true, that's called implicit bias. Police and eyewitness contradictory accounts of the shooting. Here we go. Brown's friend Dorian Johnson, who was with him when the shooting occurred, gave this account to MSNBC. Johnson said that he and Brown had been walking in the middle of the street when a police officer approached and told them to use the sidewalk. They complied, and the officer began to drive away, but then threw his car into reverse and came back alongside the scenes, nearly hitting them. Johnson heard Wilson say something like, "What you say?" before trying to open his car door, slamming it into Brown. Then the officer reached out and grabbed Brown by the neck with his left hand. The two men struggled briefly, and then Wilson, still in his car, shot Brown once. And then, you know, it continues to get into like the details and things of that nature of Dorian's account. But basically, the friend that was there with Mike Brown, he's saying that the officer had initiated the situation, which, if anybody had a front row seat to the situation, it would be Dorian. Also said that he and Brown both attempted to flee, but Brown was shot a second time. After the second shot, Brown turned around and surrendered his hands in the air, saying, "I don't have a gun, stop shooting." Johnson said that eyewitness Piaget Crenshaw told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that she was waiting for a bus when she saw a police officer try to place Brown in a squatter car. Then he saw Brown attempting to flee with his hands in the air. The officer shot Brown multiple times as Brown ran away, said Crenshaw, who has provided photographs of the scene to law enforcement. So these are two different accounts. Definitely there's some overlapping details that are similar, obviously, which is, you know, putting their hands in the air. Mike Brown putting his hands in the air saying, "Don't shoot." So at that point, the main thing that needs to be analyzed is, was Mike Brown even a threat at that point? Like, even let's say if he did fight Darren Wilson, at the point that he was shot and killed, was Mike Brown still even a threat? At that point, it seems like that wasn't the case any longer. A private autopsy found that Brown had been shot at least 6 times. The police have refused of what happened during the shooting. Obviously, we talked about that a little earlier. The police released information suggesting Brown had been in a convenience store. Let's see. The DOJ is also investigating Brown's death, so the Department of Justice grand jury proceedings beginning on August 20th. Basically, they ended up acquitting Darren, the officer Darren, from all charges and stuff. Several different law enforcement agencies and protests began immediately after Brown's death and continued throughout the week. The protests were met in aggressive. Now, some of these other links you would have to click on your own time to like watch the videos, but basically, it's kind of giving you inside perspective on like, what was happening during the time of these riots and these protests. To keep into account is that the Black Lives Matter hashtag came out. It came out as a result of Trayvon Martin's situation. You know, which Trayvon, he was a Florida teen who basically got a lot of people considered to be a run-a-cop because he wasn't a real police officer, but he was like a security kind of But in Florida, you have the right to be armed. And there's a policy called stand your ground, and basically there's proof, there's recordings that basically suggested when Zimmerman called the police and when he called the dispatcher, the dispatcher was telling Zimmerman don't pursue to not pursue Trayvon, but he said I'm going after him either way. Which at that point, the stand your ground defense shouldn't even be valid, which is what a lot of people argued, because stand your ground means it means somebody's aggressing you. Somebody is coming forward to you to attack you, and you're literally standing your ground. You're not moving forward and you're not moving backwards. You're going to stay right there, and if you need to defend yourself right where you're at, that's what you're going to do. It's impossible for you to abide by that law if you're pursuing somebody. You know what I'm saying? And then after he pursued him, they got into a struggle. Obviously, he ended up killing Trayvon, unfortunately. But as a result of all that, the Black Lives Matter movement started, and that's why you started seeing the hashtag BLM, which stands for Black Lives Matter. When Mike Brown's situation had happened as well, the tweets, because Twitter was just coming up and becoming popping at that point, the tweets of BLM were like at one of its highest points. Like when there's specific police brutality cases like that make it like real big in the mainstream media and stuff, like Eric Garner, things of that nature, like BLM is one of the highest trending tweets during those. And obviously we could see a lot of it through the George Floyd case and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. So what I'm gonna do to end today's class, because my battery's about to die right now, basics had gotten involved. So this right here is, kind of getting into like the ugliness of the situation. When all of this was by the Department of Justice, Ferguson police had been circulating. I can't play the video at the moment because it might kill the rest of my. To see that it's stating, let me take this out, a picture of President Ronald Reagan feeding a baby chimpanzee. The Ferguson police sergeant and chief and feeding baby Obama. You know what I'm saying? Because Obama was still president at the time. I'm surprised that a black man has been able to keep President Obama, being put in his presidency and stuff like that. Smells basically. Henke and Sergeant William Mudd resigned early in the month after the emails were discovered of Ferguson's report. So, unfortunately, and the captain being in on these kinds of emails, the fact of the matter is, what do you think is going to happen with the rest of the department? They're going to feel like it's safe for them to do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this racist mentality, this, it's basically it's like a virus, you know what I'm saying? It's a bacteria, like, it's going to continue to spread if you don't kill it. You know what I'm saying? And if you have people at the top, the captain, the sergeant, being in on this and allowing these emails to circulate and they know about it, it's like, obviously your officers are going to believe this. They're going to believe it's okay, and they're going to believe that they can continue to do this. And again, the police department in Ferguson was over 80% white in a almost 70% black community. You know what I'm saying? So, like, how does that even fit with community policing or with community relations and things of that nature? It just doesn't. Possible. So any backlash or negativity that came from these situations, and you're talking about this was 2013 or, you know what I'm saying, after 2010, the situation happened, like, it's only going to continue to get worse until it reaches a boiling point. So did it recently, you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the And we talked about it in one of our previous classes. Like, there was a Facebook page with police just posting a bunch of racist stuff, and it's like this is not even hidden anymore. Like, they keep it out in broad day for people to know and for people to, to kind of like mock the public. Like, hey, look, we're doing this. You know what I'm saying? Nobody can stop us. We're the most powerful, force in the country. But it's like now we've reached a boiling point. It's like do or die type of time right now. So I'm gonna end it right there, but I'm gonna open it up to some questions, comments, like We could continue the conversation, of course, but what are some general takeaways that you have from the from just this conversation?
Professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I submitted the dope game homework reflective paper yesterday, but I submitted it to the women part too. So I submitted it twice, just to let you know.
Okay. All right. I'll keep it in mind. If anything, just if you wanna read like the one that you did it twice, like you can send it to me through email, and I'll still count it for you.
Okay, but I can't see the reflective paper for the women part too. I can't see because I already submitted, so I can't see the questions.
Or no, I think you can still probably see it. I mean, if anything, just send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to send you the questions. If you're still not able to see them.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Sure. Yeah. What are some general takeaways you got from just today's discussion? Maybe how it relates to what's happening right now. Like any questions or comments that you want to add into the situation?
I, for one, think the whole police department everywhere in the United States needs to be disbanded and rebuilt from scratch. Because it's funny how I keep seeing these articles about Obama has more learning hours than the police department. It's funny because we trust these people with our lives, but the more the way the police kill civilians is way higher in the United States compared to I'm sorry about that. The United States, the police department in the United States kills more people than Norway, Finland, and Germany. And these countries require more hours, more degrees. Some parts in the United States only need a high school diploma for you to join the police force, and it's crazy. Look at the way New York has a money allocated settlements. All that money can be useful towards schools, healthcare. It's crazy. I don't know how this is gonna work, but something has to be done. And I feel like this whole protest thing, I don't think it's gonna last. Everybody's gonna be tired one way or the other. Everybody's gonna forget all this, and we still have to deal with all these issues.
Well, that's going to apply the pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like each and every one of you have a voice. Like all of y'all, whether you believe it or not, like all of y'all contribute and add how culture changes and how it switches over, especially since you're pursuing higher education. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna be in positions of power where you influence things. That's why, like I put out to my students, like other careers. Don't just think about being a police officer or what I'm saying, like just an officer in general. Like see how you could get involved in policy or managing a certain agency like the mayor's office of criminal justice, or maybe if you're thinking about or if you work in education currently, like what can you do through the education system that can kind of create more awareness amongst young people about like what's happening in the community, like finding different ways to basically navigate these things, because at the end of the day, the police, the things that they do are dictated by policy. You know what I'm saying? What they can and can't do oftentimes is dictated by policies and legislation and things of that nature. Those are the positions that are really even more important than just being in the front lines, because at the end of the day, you could be in the front lines as an officer, and like there's still a very powerful police culture that's going to tell you you have to do this, or you know what I'm saying, or we're just going to have to lay you off or punish you, or you know what I'm saying. If you haven't had the chance, watch Crime Plus Punishment. It's on Hulu. It's about the NYPD 12, who are basically Black and Hispanic police officers that of color that got tired of like over policing certain communities, fulfilling a quota system that's been in the for years, and they basically filed a joint lawsuit against the NYPD, and you know what I'm saying, like think about the different and the main thing is continuing to apply the pressure. If people get tired of hearing this conversation, to be honest, that's their business, because you got to think about it like this, like the momentum is like, when's the last time that this opportunity has been in the position or in the hands of the people? And who knows when's the next time something like this like this huge movement of momentum will happen again, because they might smarten up and figure out a way to like put people back asleep. You know what I'm saying? So like, if people are getting tired of having the conversation, like, everybody should know how to approach it, and everybody knows how committed they want to be to talking about it. But sometimes you have to be comfortable with discomfort. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody is ready to have these conversations. Not everybody wants to have these conversations, and it could be for different reasons. But generally speaking, these conversations are the starting point to policy changes, and to systems being revolutionized and things of that nature. So the main thing I would say is continue to apply the pressure. Obviously, you're applying it by pursuing your careers and by continually educating yourselves. But in whatever ways that you could do in the present, continue to push that momentum forward. Even if it's just pulling to a protest, or maybe even just like posting up a flyer about a protest, whatever you think can help the cause to continue to move forward. Peaceful protests, I should put out there, because obviously we know there's a lot of other stuff happening, things of that nature. But yeah, I think your point too on the police over here killing more people than like several countries combined, like that says a lot. You have police killing over 1,000 people on a yearly basis. That's, what I'm saying, like, that's more than twice the number of days that there are in a year. So at the end of the day, police obviously in this country have a sense of entitlement. They feel like they can get away with things, and generally speaking, they do. If you were to be in their position, being a white officer, in America, you know what I'm saying, you got to kind of understand it from that angle too. Like they probably do believe and know what their privilege can get them. So they're gonna take advantage of it. What are some other takeaways from today's class? Let me get at least like two more.
I saw that they released the police report for Breonna Taylor's murder, and they said that she had no injuries. Even though she got shot like 8 times, it said injuries none. How is that even possible? Like, that's how corrupt the system is. So they investigated themselves, but it's best they didn't do it at all, because it didn't like get to the bottom of the whole thing. And I don't think we even know who the officers are till this day.
Right.
So what was the whole point in doing the investigation if they didn't do it properly, or if they just did it to cover their behinds?
You're talking about the Breonna Taylor situation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they're obviously trying to cover up the situation again. This is just what police generally do, but they're not really going to come out and acknowledge these things, because obviously the moment they do, it's like you're basically snitching on yourself. Like there's a huge irony in police culture where it's like, they have these different programs like tip giver, or all these different hotlines that basically let people kind of give tips, which the streets consider snitching or whatever. But it's like police themselves have a no snitch rule. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're asking you to snitch so that way they can be successful with closing out cases and stuff like that. But then when it comes to their own, like, they'll never snitch. You know what I'm saying? So like the double standard that exists in that in itself is like, it's pretty comical. But at the end, the main thing is just being aware of this reality, because they're going to take advantage of it. Where there's power, there's going to be corruption. That's just kind of the slogan and the motto of life in general. The main thing is kind of like reversing that pressure, reversing that authority, and reminding these authorities, like, as powerful as you think. you know, and when there's moments like what we're experiencing right now, this is a heavy reminder. That's why, you know, you have every single politician saying, we see you, we hear you. You know, you got police departments taking a knee. You know, you got the NFL commissioner saying we were wrong on the issue. You know, they literally blackballed Colin Kaepernick from joining a league simply because he was peacefully protesting. He wasn't saying anything, you know, saying that isn't true today, as we can see. So at the end of the day, you know, this is just how authorities and powers like to move, and you know, for whatever reason, they think that they can continue to get away with it. Let me take one more input.
It's gonna be hard to like get the to get police department to kind of like reverse their mentality, because I was watching a video and there was a group of police officers and they said that the upper people up above them are telling them like, hey, you got to target Hispanics and Black individuals from 14 to 20. So it's like, if they have that mentality and they're telling them to go out and do that, it's like you have to start from even not just the police academy, but like anyone up above that.
Yeah, that's valid. Because again, going back to police culture, like, and I'm telling you this even from in DOC. I wasn't a correctional officer, nothing like that. But there's culture in every workplace. It could be in education. You know, if you work in education, you know there's a culture there. It could be in the sports arena, in the locker room. Wherever you work, there's always a culture, right? But police, you know, officers in general, they have a very different culture. And oftentimes it's dictated by the top. But the thing is, in order to get to the top, you had to start at the bottom at some point. You know what I'm saying? And for you to go from the bottom to get to the top, you got to get jiggy with the program. That's just kind of what it is. Like, unless you don't want to get to the top, or unless you don't want to keep the job for an extended period of time, because either they run you out of the job, or you cave in from the stress and you just quit from the position. The reality is, like, you're going to give in at some point, you know, which is why I'm saying, like, consider different alternatives for careers, because culture plays a big role as to why certain agencies and certain departments move the way they move. You know what I'm saying? Like police, it's not no coincidence that they move like this. Like, we talked about it, the origin of police or the slave patrol. There was a culture that was already set from the very beginning to think that Black people are evil, you know what I'm saying, or that Black people are the worst of the worst. So obviously we still see it today. Like, the majority of police, over 70% of police in the United States are white. So it's like, it's still going to be that kind of thinking and that kind of mentality. And, you know, you got to remember, like the slave patrol were going after slaves slaves, they weren't even considered to be human at one point in time. You know what I'm saying? Like this mentality is not just going to get suddenly erased in 150 years after slavery. You know what I'm saying? Because 150 years for a country is still not even that long of a time ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, for us, maybe like for a person, that's like if we was to compare that to human years, that's like maybe like 20 years ago as far as a country. The United States is still a pretty new country because it didn't get established until the 1700s. You know what I'm saying? Where you have countries and dynasties that have been around for centuries already, and they still haven't reached the same level of power that the U.S. has. So to conclude, to finish, basically the culture of police is a very strong one. It's been around for a long time. The reality is, the only feasible solution is to tear it down completely and start from scratch, because it's like a building. Anytime you build a building on a faulty foundation, it's going to continue to collapse. it don't matter how many times you continue to rebuild that building. If you don't go under the dirt, under the soil, break everything apart from under the soil that was already in there, and then rebuild a new foundation, and then build a new building, it's going to continue to collapse. So that's you have to get into the root. You know what I'm saying? You can't deal with the leaves and the branches. You have to go under the dirt, deal with the root, because that's the start of everything. You know, people they want to deal with the symptoms, right? Like if you're sick, you know, you're sneezing, you're coughing, this and that. Right. You don't want to just take prescription that or take medicine that deals with sneezing and coughing. You want to know, okay, what can I do to get rid of this cold? That's the whole perspective. That's the whole objective right there, right? It should be the same thing when it comes to you know what I'm saying, to like doing away with corrupt policing or racist policing and things of that nature. And the reality is, you know, some of the things that are being proposed, people still think is extreme, like defunding the police, for example. A lot of people are against it because they're like, oh, that's going to be a free pass for what's that show again? For the purge to happen. The reality is, like, the average person out here committing crime is not out here with a Uzi or with an AK shooting in broad day. Yeah, your circumstances or your situations where people are doing that, like in the hood or whatever, but the majority of people are not out here doing that. And we clearly see, like, if at any moment the U.S. needed paramilitary forces and powers, it could literally summon the moment. You know what I'm saying? So police have been over-militarized. The reason why they received all that equipment in the first place was to combat terrorist groups. But the reality is, after 9/11, there have been more terroristic attacks by white Americans, by white terrorist supremacist groups than there have been by Islamic terrorist groups or any other group in general. So that's just the reality of it. But I'm gonna close out for today. If you guys got any questions or any concerns, obviously you can hit me through IG or email. I haven't been doing this recently, but I want, when we start our classes or even when we end our classes, for all of us to be like, yeah. So on the count of 3, I want everybody to give me a yo. Y'all ready for this?
Yeah.
Y'all ready for this? Y'all gonna join me with the yo?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I'm gonna wake up everybody in this house.
Heard you.
Yep.
On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. You know the vibes, you know what time it is. Happy birthday to Shaughnessy, and tomorrow we're gonna have another birthday, and you know, however many other birthdays come, we'll celebrate them joints and figure. Hey, stay safe in the meantime. Enjoy your weekend, and you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna talk to you on Monday. All right.
Thank you. Happy birthday,
Professor.
tomorrow.
Happy birthday
Happy
Okay.
birthday.
to Ada, I think, and
For sure, for
Thank
sure.
On
Ada,
Ada, okay.
happy birthday to you, Ada. I forgot tomorrow we don't got classes. We'll talk about it again in the, on Monday. Happy belated for you. All right.
Thank you.
Peace.